Hey everyone, welcome to week 5 of our series together through 1 Peter. Now I hope that you've enjoyed this. I've heard really great feedback about what people are experiencing in small group. I hope that that's true for you. And the thing that we're hoping for, the thing that we're praying for you is not just that you're getting great information, but you're building fantastic community and relationships with one another. This is what we want for you. We want you to know that there are people in your life who have your back and you have their back. We want you to know that there are people in your life that they know you, and people who you know, people who encourage you, people who live life with you, people who you're supporting, people who you're holding accountable and that you're encouraging. These are the kinds of relationships. This is the kind of deep, rich Christian community that we're hoping blossoms out of the small group experience. Yes, we want to grow in our knowledge of God's Word, but we also want to grow in our experience of community and our relationship and our friendships with one another. So I hope that that's what you are experiencing today. You get to take your next step in that as you talk about the passage from 1 Peter. You talk about how it applies to your life. You talk about insights you have. You talk about questions that you have. God will use it in His sovereignty and His kindness to help bring you together more and more. Remember, one of the things that we read in 1 Peter is that we are living stones, but we're being built into a spiritual house. We're not just a stack of rocks. God is doing something with us together, and our community identity is so incredibly important. And that's a big reason why that Peter said, I'm going to dip back into last week. I'm going to dip back into chapter 2. Peter said, listen, all of you, listen, this is what we got to do. We got to submit to governing authorities, even when they're jerks, even when they are unjust, even when they are harsh to us. And then he took it a step further. He said, listen, slaves, even in that unjust situation, when you have a master who is harsh and unkind to you and puts you in situations that you do not deserve, treats you in a way that you don't deserve, out of deep reverence for God, everyone, for the sake of Jesus, submit even then. And then he pivots, and now he brings it home, and he starts talking about the home life. And first he talks to wives, and then he talks to husbands. I don't know which feels like more of a landmine, last week or this week. Either way, that's okay. We're talking about stuff that for some of us, it feels explosive, and it might even feel divisive. One of the things we wanted to make clear is Peter is not trying to present an idealized home structure. He's not saying, hey, this is how God designed it, so do it this way. He's responding to Roman culture and the typical Roman household. And he's saying, ladies, this is how you apply the gospel. This is how you stand firm in the true grace of God. Men, this is how you stand firm in the true grace of God. Remember, 1 Peter, it was a letter. It's not intended to be read like a book. It was not written with verse numbers. It was not written with chapter breaks. It is one continuous flowing thought out of the thought of submitting even to governing authorities that treat us badly, submitting even to slave masters who treat us badly. Wives, when you are in a difficult situation, when you are married to a man who does not believe in Jesus, who has rejected the gospel and maybe will not even allow you to talk about the gospel at home, maybe he won't even allow you to go and gather with fellow believers, what do you do then? Peter's saying, listen, look to Jesus. Follow his example. We're going to look to Jesus, and we're going to be like Jesus in that situation. Now, naturally, understandably, when we come to passages like this, there are a couple of big theological camps, complementarianism or egalitarianism, and we're naturally wanting to look at the passage through whichever camp we're already in. I think Peter would say, we're not having any of that. What we're supposed to do is use the text to evaluate ourselves. We're supposed to use the text to evaluate our way of thinking. And an honest look at this text really isn't about complementarianism, and it's not about egalitarianism. It's about Jesus. And it's about standing firm in the true grace of God no matter what situation that we were in. Every believer, every single believer is called to a posture of submission. Now, how that looks for you and how that looks for me might be different. It's not always going to play out identically, but it is universal for all believers. These are a couple of things that I want you to talk about in your group. Number one, if submission wasn't too good for the king, why would it be too good for his servants? if submission wasn't beneath King Jesus, if he submitted, certainly his servants, you and me, we should adopt a posture of submission too. Secondly, and this is really the framework that's very helpful to understand all that we're reading here in 1 Peter. Jesus is the lens through which we see ourselves, and we are the lens through which other people see Jesus. What is it that we're looking at, and what is it that we want people to see in us? When we think about that, it gives us clarity, and it gives us courage to stand fast in the true grace of God and apply the gospel to whatever situation we're in, because here's the number one goal. We want to live our lives in such a way, we're royal priests, we want to represent Jesus in such a way that people are inspired to worship him. So maybe you're married to someone, or you're in a close relationship with someone, or you're connected to someone who is not a follower of Jesus. Are you willing to follow the example of Jesus and live your lives in such a way to make it easier for them to see him through you, so that that person would also worship Jesus? Peter specifically addressed husbands in the context that they had social advantages, they had legal advantages, they had physical advantages. He said, listen, men, it's our job. This is what Peter was saying. It's our job to leverage our advantage for the good of our wives and honor them and respect them as equals, as co-heirs in grace and in life that comes from Christ. And so we can apply that to husbands. We can apply it to any of us, men and women, who are in positions of authority and privilege and power. Let's be like Jesus. Let's look to Jesus. And let's leverage all of those things that we have for the benefit and the good of others. So this is the trajectory of growth. This is the trajectory of discipleship. This is what full devotion really looks like. We're going to look to Jesus. We're going to grow more and more to look like Jesus. And we want people to see Jesus more and more in and through our lives, because we want them to know him in the way that we know him. I hope you have a fantastic conversation. We'll pick it up again next week.